Tom Goslowski here with you on 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com, and joining us on the phone lines. He's a part of the team at 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. Rich Keefe joins us. And Rich, we'll talk Boston sports in a bit, but you and I have a connection. We are both former Hobart College football players. What do you remember about your time in Geneva, New York?
I remember, well, it's very cold there, but I am from New England, so I'm used to the cold. But I definitely remember that. And also, just how good the football was. To be honest, I didn't know a ton about Hobart growing up in New England. And then, once the recruiting process took place, that looked like a place that was going to be a good fit for me. And I know, the people in Albany are certainly a lot more familiar with Hobart than people around Boston were. But I remember the football was very competitive and some very good games, and it was a lot of fun.
Now, how did you get your start in the business? How did you work your way up from Geneva to ended up at 98.5 The Sports Hub?
Well, I'll tell you, at Hobart, I ended up doing play-by-play for basketball, and I ended up hosting a weekly radio show with one of my friends, for fun. And once I got out of college, realized I had to get a job, and I was saying, all right, well, this is something I really like to do. So I applied to one of the local stations in southern New Hampshire and was really just like a sort of a correspondent. They did a show every Friday night where they were at high school football games around the state, and you would call in updates and things like that live from the field. And that's why I sort of got my foot in the door. Then they had some other openings, and I ended up being a part of, the night show there. And then the station I work at now in Boston popped up. They flipped formats. It used to be a rock station, actually, WBCN. Some people may be familiar with the famous rock station. They flipped to sports back in 2009. And, applied, got myself in there doing weekends at first, and now I'm part of the night show and some of the other stuff that we do.
Rich Keefe joins us, part of the team at 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. Today is draft day. Now, unfortunately, unless another team goes in the first round and grabs a Hobart statesman like they did with Ali Marpet in the second round last year, you and I guess, are still eligible, but it's very unlikely to happen. The New England Patriots lost their first-round pick because of Deflategate. Tom Brady gets a 4-game suspension. What has the reaction been like in Boston after the news came down about the suspension? Is it this was inevitable, or are Boston and Patriot fans still upset about it?
Definitely still upset about it. I mean, for sure, still upset about it. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, Patriots fans, the majority of them, were trying to figure out ways to get our draft picks back. Mm-hmm. And that's what the talk was. And then now that is certainly out the window with the draft tonight. And now the 4-game suspension is back on the table. It is one of those things that I'll sort of believe it when I see it, because we were also told last year was going to be a 4-game suspension, and that never happened. Now we are closer to that being a reality, but there are still some other options that Tom Brady and his legal team can go through. But I think they're starting to prepare for maybe 4 games of Jimmy Garoppolo, which I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, maybe we'll find out just how good he is rather than mop-up duty or preseason games. We'll get a chance to see him in 4 regular season games, find out if maybe he's the quarterback of the future, or if it's maybe time to trade him for something, or just cut bait altogether. So at the very least, there might be some good in what was a pretty bad situation.
Who are some of the players Patriot fans are hoping that the Pats select in the NFL draft?
It's interesting because you talk to 3 or 4 different people, you might get 3 or 4 different answers just about position alone. I think defensive line is an important position with, Akeem Hicks has moved on. They cut Dominique Easley, who was an absolute bust as a first-round pick from a couple of years ago. So defensive line, I personally like a guy like Kenny Clark from UCLA, very productive player out there. Offensive line, I think, would be a pretty good spot to have, too, because even though the Patriots have a couple of good tackles in Sebastian Vollmer and Nate Solder, you certainly can't rely on those guys staying healthy. They didn't last year. That led to Marcus Cannon having to play a lot of the offensive line. That's not a good thing. So a guy like Jason Spriggs from Indiana, I think, would be an intriguing pick, maybe around at 60 and 61, where the Patriots pick in the second round. I think running back, wide receiver, even corner, I think all of those could be potential picks for the Patriots as well.
Rich Keefe joins us here on the phone lines on 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. He's a part of the team at 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. And on Friday, right here for your home for the New York Yankees, 104.5 The Team. The Yankees match up with their rival Boston Red Sox. And, Rich, we've had this discussion on the air about the farewell tour of Big Papi David Ortiz. Should it be like Mariano Rivera and Derek Jeter's? Has there been any backlash about the David Ortiz Big Papi farewell tour?
It's not so much backlash, but, a lot of us kind of make light of it and poke fun at it, and I think we're being consistent. If you happen to be somebody who is a fan of the Jeter or the Rivera, the Clemens, I think Chipper Jones even got one. Like, if you happen to like that, then you should just like all of them. If you made fun of those ones, you need to make fun of this one too. And that's where I think the majority of people are. He got a cowboy hat in his last game against the Houston Astros. Like, what is he going to do with that hat? Like, they were giving him stuff at spring training, which was ridiculous. Like, they named a street after him down there, and they gave him seats. Like, I'm sure he wants seats from JetBlue Park. I don't know what he's going to do with all this stuff. It is a little silly, but he's certainly not the first player to go through this, and we know that he won't be the last.
David Price, the big addition in the offseason, he got off to a rough start for the Red Sox. Is the concern level already rising in Red Sox Nation?
Well, it's funny. If he came in, 10 years ago or prior to them winning the World Series, I guess going back 12 years ago, I think there'd be a lot more concern and panic. But Red Sox fans, believe it or not, are a little bit more patient right now. I mean, you're definitely going to have your extremes and people freaking out about both him and Craig Kimbrell, who's come in and hasn't really been a complete shutdown guy. He's had some rough innings. But I think there's definitely more positive thoughts as far as David Price is concerned. I know it was a brutal Braves lineup, but he just went through that 8 innings, 14 strikeouts. The ERA is not where you want it to be. He is a slower starter as far, typically going back to his career, April's been his worst month. So I think he's got a longer leash than maybe he would have several years ago. But if he has some bad starts in May, if he doesn't look good this weekend against the Yankees, then you're going to maybe get some people fired up about him.
Rich Keefe from 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston, joins us here on the phone lines, 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. And Rich, for the fans that may not know here in the Capital Region about hashtag Keefer Madness, tell them a little bit about what goes on 98.5 The Sports Hub when Keefer Madness takes over.
Yeah, so once a week because we do a 5-hour show at night, and then so this is sort of your odd news story. And it originally started, the first story we ever did for Keefer Madness was the whole Manti Te'o thing.
Oh, wow.
That first hit, we got the whole story from Deadspin. And so initially the idea of Keefer Madness was going to be, all right, let's find like a weird sports story. But then that quickly derailed into just a weird news story. So we take like about a 10-minute hiatus from sports every night and talk about, animal attacks or just whatever else is going on. The ridiculous news stories that you might see, whether it's Deadspin, Barstool, things like that. And it's actually taken off pretty good, and listeners seem to really enjoy it, and sort of a little bit of a break from all our serious sports discussions.
You guys had one yesterday, I think it was, about Ric Flair in the Boston airport and everything that happened. I don't want to give away too much. It is hysterical.
No, you're right. Yeah, Ric Flair had a rough day at Logan Airport, and he was passed out. Then there was conflicting reports on whether or not he had a bloody head or a hand injury, and his rep had to make comments for him. And I think witnesses were saying he was acting very drunk and shambling about. So I don't know what went down. We saw some pictures of it, but yeah, those are the types of stories that'll sort of find their way into Keefer Madness.
Right, and you can find a lot of Keefer Madness clips, all of that, at his Twitter account for Rich Keefe at Keefe21. And we'll get you out of here on this in a game we like to play from that Twitter account. We'd like to play a game with our guest called Defend Your Tweet. Are you willing to play?
Nice.
Are you willing to play?
I would love to play.
All right. You tweeted this 6 days ago from your Twitter account at Keefe21, quote, I love the Celtics. I love the NBA. I hate the let's wear the same shirt and look like a high school/college student section. Defend your tweet.
Yes, correct. I absolutely did tweet that because the Celtics getting ready for both Game 3 and Game 4, they put green shirts on every seat in the TD Garden. And I don't like it for several reasons. I just don't think, first of all, every NBA team is doing it. So I don't know why you'd want to do something that every NBA team does, like your Oklahoma Cities and their long storied tradition of basketball down there in Oklahoma City. I think it is something that reeks of high school and college. And I think that's cool. Like in high school and college, it's nice. Like there's your student section. They're all wearing the same shirt. Like if organically everybody wore a green jersey or a white jersey or whatever it is to the Garden, that's cool. But to sort of force everybody into wearing the same shirt, I think it's ridiculous. I think my next tweet was, ironically enough, I happen to love free T-shirts. One of my shirts that I own are free T-shirts. But I don't think we all need to wear them together at the same time.
That's one of the best defenses I've heard in a long time there to defend your tweet. Great job, and I know why you pulled it off, because you used your great Hobart College education to eloquently answer that. He's a proud Hobart College graduate like myself, a former football player. Rich Keefe, make sure to check him out at Keefe21, Keefer Madness, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Rich, if you ever make a chance up and get by upstate New York again, you let us know. We'll make sure to stay in touch. Take care, man.
All right, thanks so much.